In Israel right now, if you've had 3 doses of the vaccine, you are technically considered more freer than someone who was once considered fully vaccinated after having 2 doses of the vaccine in Israel. And why am I telling you this in Australia? Well, our leaders right now, our premiers, our prime minister, all sorts of health bureaucrats are telling us that once we achieve 70 to 80% coverage of the vaccination rate in this country, in Australia and in our states, that life will go back to a COVID normal, and the fully vaccinated, who are those who are double dosed, double jabbed, will have all sorts of new freedoms. But is there something they're not telling us? Is there something that maybe they're keeping from us? Something that the future that we can already see in countries around the world might be giving us warning signs of what we will be facing once we reach those targets. Now, if we consider Israel, see that population in that country, almost 80%, if not more, of the eligible population, 12 years and older, are fully vaccinated with 2 jabs. But just a few weeks ago, the country opened up its booster shot regime, which means that the population is now eligible to getting a 3rd shot, the booster shot. And since that time, almost 20% of the population who are eligible for the booster shot have taken that on. And what's that meant for the people in Israel is the government's now considering changes to their vaccination passport system and to the rights and freedoms of those who are double jabbed. See, we're entering a stage in Israel right now where the definition of fully vaccinated is changing from those who have 2 doses to those who have 3 doses. And it's hard for me to look at that and see a future where in Australia, our vaccination status will also not be tied to the dosages that we receive, right? Fully vaccinated, it appears from the Israeli experience, can mean just about anything the government and the health bureaucrats want it to mean. Right now, in Australia, the definition of fully vaccinated is 2 doses of either the Pfizer or the AstraZeneca vaccine. But obviously that will be made much broader once other vaccines are available. And then once we enter our booster regime, which the government in this country openly now discusses at their press conferences, what will that mean? Will that mean that someone that is fully vaccinated now in Australia with 2 doses, enjoying their picnics in Sydney, will one day be considered not fully vaccinated and a part of the unvaxxed, because all of a sudden the fully vaccinated have had to have had their 3rd dose of whatever vaccine it is that the booster shot program approves? Is this the future that we're heading for? See, in Israel, if you've had your 3rd booster shot, the freedom that you have right now that someone who's had 2 shots doesn't have is if you travel overseas in Israel and you come back into the country, if you've had 3 doses of the vaccine, you no longer have to quarantine. Whereas if you've had 2 doses longer than 5 months ago, you will be forced into doing a quarantine. Because in Israel, the science and the people in charge of making these recommendations and these mandates are saying that the efficacy of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, which most of the population has had in Israel, is only good for a certain amount of months. So you definitely need the booster shot to boost the success rate of this vaccine. And this is a country that is, fully jabbed, 2 doses. It's been celebrated by our leaders. Sometimes they mention it. Other countries all around the world talk about Israel because they reach those targets so quickly. But now we're seeing the effects of reaching those targets and what it means, because there's something else happening in Israel right now. And that is, Israel is having a boom in the number of cases amongst their population. In the hospitals right now, you are having people who are vaccinated, you are having people who are unvaccinated, both these cohorts ending up in hospital with the virus. almost 10,000 cases in Israel in one day. It is booming. And this is the funniest part. Certain parts of the European Union are considering stopping travel from those in Israel coming to their countries because of the booming rate of the virus in that country. Think about it. It's a country with such a high vaccination rate. It's the same rates that we want to reach as a country in Australia. But now they're having restrictions put on them because those with the double jab, Pfizer jab in Israel, it's just not working out the way that they were told originally. The booster shot has become essential to being fully vaccinated in that country. And, for me, when I'm looking at this, I definitely see the possibility of this becoming a thing in Australia. I think it's important that our leaders start clearing this up and letting people know that actually fully vaccinated pretty much means whatever the government tells you, right? Fully vaccinated doesn't mean that we take 2 jabs now and then we're set for life. The way that things are going with these vaccine passports and the way these regimes are implementing these mandates, fully vaccinated means whatever they want it to mean. So you are in for a entire, almost like a subscription-based model to vaccinations. Possibly. We could go down the path of a country like Denmark, who have decided to just drop their vaccine passports and all domestic restrictions now that they've reached the 70 to 80% mark in terms of the local population being vaccinated. That's the path they've gone down. So it's possible in Australia we might go down this path as well. But we're a very over-cautious nation. The way that our leaders have been acting is very on the over-cautious side. So I feel like we'll be going down the same path as Israel, where the definition of fully vaccinated will keep changing. And you decide for yourself what that means. But as far as I know, and as far as what it means for me as an individual, I'm very skeptical of the government's promises. I'm very suspicious of the things they're telling us, which are going to allow for our freedom. So many times, in the space of a day, they flip and flop on their health advice. So as we look to countries around the world, as we look to what's happening in Israel, we should take some heart, take some solace, and imagine what the future in Australia might possibly look like, and start asking those vital questions now. Thanks everyone for joining me for this episode of Real Time with Rukshan. I'll see you all next time.